It's best to watch this video while you also have your sheet in front of you. First, start by putting your name on your sheet of paper. All right, so the first number is 4, and we're going to find all these percents of that number. So the first percent is 0%. If I have $4 and I give you 0% of my money, that means I'm giving you nothing. So you get $0. Okay? 100% means I give it all to you. Lucky you. That would mean you would get all $4. 50%, that means half. So if I give you half of 4, that means you would get 2. And if you can't think of what's half, half means you divide the number by 2. All right, 25% is half of half. So I'm going to take this number and I'm going to divide that one by 2. So 2 divided by 2, or half of 2, would be 1. 75% comes from adding 25% plus 50%. So I could do 1 plus 2 to get 3. Oh, hey, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's kind of like a pattern. All right, 200% means double. So I'm going to take my original amount and I'm going to double it, or I'm going to times it by 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. All right, 350% would mean I'd have to triple this number. So I'd have to take my number and times it by 3. And then I also have to take that number and divide it by 2 to get the half. And then I will add both of those together. Okay, and according to the order of operations, we would want to multiply and divide first before we add. But if you want, so you don't forget, you could also have parentheses. All right, so if we take this and we times it by 3, we get 12. And then if we find half of this, which we already did, which is an extra 2, we're going to do 12 plus 2 more, which is 14. All right, on the flip side. All right, so 10% is actually what I'm going to start with on this one. So 10% means we take like the whole amount and then we break it up into 10 pieces. I'm not going to draw all 10, but it's like that one of the 10 little pieces. So we could take this number and we can divide it by 10. So 20 divided by 10 would be 2. Okay, then 1% would mean we take this 10% and we chop this up into 10 little pieces. And so it would be like that little sliver right there. So we'd have to divide it by 10 again. So I'm going to do 2 divided by 10. You might want a calculator for that. And we get 0.2. Another strategy, though, is when you're dividing by 10, you're moving the decimal once. So that gives us 2. And when you divide by 10 again, the decimal is going to move to the left, and the decimal will then be in front of the 2. So that is a shortcut if you can remember that shortcut. If you can't remember which way to move the decimal or how many times, then don't use that strategy. All right, if we know 10%, 5% is half of that. So I can take this number and divide it by 2 to find half. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. Then I'm going to do 20% next. 20% is double 10%. So 2 doubled would be 4. All right, 5% plus 10% would be 15%. So I'm going to do 1 plus 2, and I'll get 3. Now this is just a complete coincidence that we have those numbers and we did on the flip side. It's not always going to be those numbers. All right, 25%. We can do 20% plus 5%, Or we could do 5% times 5 to get this, because 5 of these would make this. You could also do 10% plus 10% plus 5%. There's a lot of options. You could also even do half to find 50% and then cut it in half again to find 25%. Okay, so I'm going to though do this one plus this one since I have them both in my paper. So I'm going to do 1 plus 4, and that gives us 5. All right, then I'm going to find 2%. If I know 1% is this, 1% plus 1% is 2%. I'm going to think about this as 20 cents. So 20 cents plus 20 cents is 40 cents. All right, let's try another because this side is a little bit trickier. All right, so if our starting number is 80, for 10%, I need to divide it by 10. So 80 divided by 10 is 8. If I then find 5%, I just have to take this number and find half of it or divide it by 2. So that would be 4. 20% is double 10%, so I'm going to double the 8 and get 16. 15%, I can add 5 plus 10%. That gives me 12. And 25%, I can do 20% plus 5%. So 16 plus 4 gives me 20. All right, 1% means I'm going to take this number here and divide it by 10. Because again, I'm trying to find that little piece. So if I know my 10%, I then have to find 1/10 of that piece. Oh, you can't even see that. There we go. I had to move that down. All right, so I'm going to take this number, divide it by 10. I get 0 and 8/10. Okay, another way to get the 1%, if there's a decimal here, you can't see it, but like I could say if this is $80, there's a decimal 00, and I'm taking that 2 times to the left to get my 1%. Okay. So for each of these, oh wait, I have to do 3%. So 3%, I could take my 1% number, and then I'm going to times it by 3, or I can add it to itself 3 times. So I could either do this, or I can do this. Those are the same thing. I'm either going to add it to itself 3 times, or repeated addition 3 times means I'm timesing it by 3. I'm going to do this one. 8 times 3 is 24. And I have 3 groups of 80 cents, so it's probably not $24. It's probably $2.40. But also I could start from the wall over here, and I had to move over 1 to the left. So I move over 1 to the left down here in the answer. So 2.4. All right, so these are all going to be kind of different, and you have to kind of figure out what you're going to combine together to get to that percent. And then for these ones here, you get to pick what percent you want to use.